Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. In this video I will be covering the part 4 of our CCNA exam question series. I have compiled a 45 practice questions to get you prepped and primed for the success on the CISCO CCNA certification exam. But hold on tight because it's not just about answering questions. We will also be explaining the concepts that will make you feel like CISCO networking superhero. So, if you are ready to ace the CISCO CCNA exam and elevate your career to new heights, make sure to hit that like button, ring the notification bell, and join our growing community of tech enthusiasts. So, gear up and let's dive into the success. Question number 1. Which type of address is the public IP address of a NAT device? Network address translation device, and the options are option A outside global, option B outside local, option C inside global, and option D inside local. And the correct option is the inside global. So these are the different type of IP addresses that are used inside and outside and on the NAT device or the NAT router. So these are the inside local IP addresses, including this. This is the inside global, that is the public IP address, or we can also call it the NAT inside global IP address. And then this is the outside global. And let's suppose if we have a LAN over here and we have private IP addresses such as 192.168, then this can be known as the outside local. So this is the concept of these different type of IP addresses when we use NAT. This is inside local, this is inside global, this is outside global, and this is outside local. So in this particular case, this inside global IP address is the public IP address of the NAT devices. These all devices have the private IP address and they use this public IP address to communicate with the outside world or the outside host over the internet. Question number 2. Which IP is used in controller-based architectures to interact with edge devices? And the options are option A overlay, option B northbound, option C underlay, and option D southbound. And the correct option is option D southbound. So this is basically the SDN controller, and these are the edge devices that we are talking about, the network switches. So the controller talks with the network switches using the southbound APIs, while on the other hand, it talks through the northbound APIs with the virtual services such as applications. So this in this direction we have north, in this downward direction we have south. So the APIs that are having the direction towards south and talks with the edge devices are known as the southbound APIs, while the API that are in the direction of the north and that interacts with the virtual services of the SDN layer are basically the northbound APIs. Question number 3. Which statement identifies the functionality of virtual machines? And the options are option A. Virtualized server run most efficiently when they are physically connected to a switch that is separate from the hypervisor. Option B. The hypervisor can virtualize physical components including CPU, memory, and storage. Option C. Each hypervisor can support a single virtual machine and a single software switch. Option D. The hypervisor communicates on layer 3 without the need for additional resources. And the correct option is option B. The hypervisor can virtualize physical components including CPU, memory, and storage. So how does this work? So this is a representation of the virtualization platform. We have hardware at the lowest layer. Above the hardware, we have the hypervisor, and above the hypervisor we can install different guest operating systems, and upon these guest operating system we have the application. So this our hardware is basically virtualized, and each VM is given its own chunk of the hardware. So we can say that the hardware is virtualized by the hypervisor and presented to the VMs or the guest operating systems. Question number 4, refer to the exhibit. So this is the exhibit. How does the router manage traffic to the 192.168.12.16 IP address? And we have three routes and three routing protocol: EIGRP, RIP, and OSPF. And the options are: option A, it chooses the EIGRP route because it has the lowest administrative distance. Option B, it load balances traffic between all three routes. Option C, it chooses the OSPF route because it has the longest prefix inclusive of the destination address. And option D, it selects the RIP route because it has the longest prefix inclusive of the destination address. And the correct option is option D, it selects the RIP route because it has the longest prefix inclusive of the destination address. So that is, destination address is basically 192.168.12.16. This destination address is included in this route. It is also included in this route, while it is not included in this route because this route range is from 0 to 15. These IP addresses are included in this route, so .16 is not included. So the RIP is selected because it has the most specific prefix, or we can also say that a longer prefix means a more specific network definition. So since this is more specific, that's why this route is selected. And since this is a broad route, it includes more IP addresses and it is a big network. This is why it is less specific, and this is why this is not selected, while the route with a more specific destination addresses that also includes the destination address is the selected route. Question number 5, what is the primary effect of the spanning tree port fast command? And the options are: option A, it enables BPDU messages. Option B, it minimizes spanning tree convergence time. Option C, it immediately puts the port into forwarding state when the switch is reloaded. And option D, it immediately enables the port in the listening state. And the correct option is option B, it minimizes spanning tree convergence time. So the primary effect of the spanning tree port fast command is to significantly reduce the time it takes for a port to enter the forwarding state, thus minimizing the spanning tree convergence time. Here is a brief explanation of why the other options are incorrect. Option A, it enables BPDU messages. Port fast actually disables BPDU reception on the port, which is essential for its functionality. Option C, it immediately puts the port into forwarding state when the switch is reloaded. This is not entirely accurate. While port fast speeds up the process, it does not guarantee immediate forwarding upon reload. And option D, it immediately enables the port in listening state. Port fast bypasses the listening and learning states altogether, going directly to the forwarding. Question number 6, what is an advantage of Cisco DNA Center versus traditional campus device management? And the options are option A, it supports numerous extensibility options, including cross-domain adapters and third-party SDKs. Option B, it supports high availability for management functions when operating in cluster mode. Option C, it enables easy auto discovery of network elements on a brownfield deployment. And option D, it is designed primarily to provide network assurance. And the correct option is option A. It supports numerous extensibility options, including cross-domain adapters and third-party SDKs. So Cisco DNA Center is designed with a robust platform that supports extensibility through cross-domain adapters, APIs, and third-party software development kits. This allows for greater flexibility in integrating with various network and IT management systems, enabling more comprehensive and customizable network management solutions. Question number 7. What event has occurred if a router sends a notice level message to a syslog server? And the options are option A, TCP connection has been turned down. Option B, an ICMP connection has been built. Option C, an interface line has changed status. And option D, a certificate has expired. And the correct option is option C, an interface status has changed. So in syslog levels, notice is used for normal but significant conditions that require attention. This level is typically used to report events like changes in the status of an interface or other noteworthy but not critical conditions. Here is a quick breakdown of all syslog levels. The debug, detailed information for debugging, informational, regular operational messages, notice level, normal but significant conditions such as interface status changes, warning messages indicating potential issues, errors that require attention, critical conditions requiring immediate attention, alert, conditions that must be fixed immediately, and emergency system is unusable and immediate action is needed. Let's move forward to question number 8. What are two fundamentals of virtualization? Choose two options, and the options are option A, the environment must be configured with one hypervisor that serves solely as a network manager to monitor SNMP traffic. Option B, it allows logical network devices to move traffic between virtual machines and the rest of the physical network. Option C, it allows multiple operating systems and applications to run independently on one physical server. Option D, it allows physical router to directly connect NICs from each virtual machine into the network. And option E, it requires that some servers, virtual machines, and network gear reside on the internet. And the correct two options are option B, it allows logical network devices to move traffic between virtual machines and the rest of the physical network. And the second correct option is option C, it allows multiple operating systems and applications to run independently on one physical server. So these are the two fundamental properties of virtualization. And the explanation of both these properties is that in virtualization, virtual switches and logical network devices handle traffic between virtual machines and the physical network. This allows VMs to communicate with each other and with the outside network through virtualized network interfaces. Multiple operating systems on one physical server. Virtualization enables multiple VMs, each with its own operating system, to run concurrently on a single physical server. This is a core principle of virtualization, providing resource efficiency and flexibility. So these are the core principle of virtualization. Question number 9. How does Cisco DNA Center gather data from the network? And the options are option A, Network devices use different services like SNMP, syslog, and streaming telemetry to send data to the controller. Option B, devices establish an IPsec tunnel to exchange data with the controller. Option C, devices use the call home protocol to periodically send data to the controller. And option D, the CISCO CU analyzer tool gathers data from each licensed network device and streams it to the controller. And the correct option is option A, network devices use different services like SNMP, syslog, and streaming telemetry to send data to the controller. So this is the correct answer. Cisco DNA Center gathers data from network devices using a variety of protocol and mechanisms to ensure comprehensive network visibilities. These include SNMP, Simple Network Management Protocol, for collecting device information like hardware, software, and configuration details. Syslog, for capturing system and application messages, including error messages and security events. Streaming telemetry, for real-time data collection, enabling faster troubleshooting and performance monitoring. Let's move forward to question number 10. Refer to the exhibit. This is the exhibit. The network administrator wants VLAN 67 traffic to be untagged between switch 1 and switch 2 while all other VLANs are to remain tagged. Which command accomplishes this task? So here we have two switches, switch 1 and switch 2, and we have two PCs, PCA and PCB, and we want that, let's suppose these two ports are trunk, we want that VLAN 67 traffic is untagged between them while rest of the VLAN's traffic is tagged. So what is the command to accomplish this task? And the options are option A, switch port access VLAN 67. Option B, switch port trunk allowed VLAN 67. Option C, switch port private VLAN association host 67. And option D, switch port trunk native VLAN 67. And the correct option and the correct command is switch port trunk native VLAN 67. So this command sets VLAN 67 as the native VLAN on the trunk link, ensuring that traffic for VLAN 67 is sent untagged across the trunk, while traffic for all other VLANs remains tagged. Question number 11. What are two roles of the dynamic host configuration protocol DHCP? Choose two options, and the options are option A. The DHCP server offers the ability to exclude specific IP addresses from a pool of IP addresses. Option B. The DHCP client can request up to 4 DNS server addresses. Option C. The DHCP server assigns IP addresses without requiring the client to renew them. Option D. The DHCP server leases client IP address dynamically. And option E. The DHCP client maintains a pool of IP addresses it can assign. And the correct options are option A. The DHCP servers offers the ability to exclude specific IP addresses from a pool of IP addresses. And the DHCP server leases client IP addresses dynamically. So these are the two correct options and roles of the DHCP server. Question number 12. Which two minimum parameters must be configured on an active interface to enable OSPF version 2 to operate? Choose two options, and the options are option A, OSPF area, option B, OSPF MD5 authentication key, option C, IP version 6 address, option D, OSPF process ID, and option E, OSPF stub flag. And the correct options are OSPF area and OSPF process ID. So these two parameters are essential for OSPF v2 to function correctly, as they define the area in which the OSPF process will operate and the specific OSPF instance process running on the router. Question number 13. Which purpose does a northbound API serve in a controller-based networking architecture? The options are: option A, communicates between the controller and physical network hardware. Option B, reports device errors to a controller. Option C, generates statistics for network hardware and traffic. And option D, facilitates communication between the controller and the application. So we already answered a similar question in this session, and the correct option is that the northbound API is used to facilitate communication between the controller and the application, while the southbound API is used to facilitate communication between the controller and the edge devices or the network switches. And again, this is visible by this diagram. So the northbound API facilitates communication between virtual services or applications, while the southbound API facilitate communication between the controller and the network switches or the edge devices. Question number 14, refer to the exhibit. If the network environment is operating normally, which type of device must be connected to the interface fast Ethernet 01? And this is the exhibit. So we have IP ARP inspection VLAN 2 to 10, interface fast Ethernet 01, IP ARP inspection trust. And the options are: option A, DHCP client, option B, access point, option C, router, and option D, PC. And the correct option is option C, router. And why is that? It is because the configuration shown in the exhibit enables dynamic ARP inspection on VLAN 2 to 10 and makes interface fast Ethernet 01 as trusted. In a normal operating network environment, a trusted interface typically connects to devices that need to forward large amount of ARP traffic without inspection, such as switches, router, or other network infrastructure devices that are not likely to send malicious ARP messages. Based on this, the correct answer is router. A router connected to fast Ethernet 01 would be trusted to send ARP traffic without being inspected, as routers are considered reliable devices in terms of ARP traffic. Question number 15. What is the primary purpose of first hop redundancy protocol? And the options are: option A, it allows directly connected neighbors to share configuration information. Option B, it allows a router to use bridge priorities to create multiple loop-free paths to a single destination. Option C, it reduces routing failures by allowing layer 3 load balancing between OSPF neighbors that have the same link metric. And option D, it reduces routine failures by allowing more than one router to represent itself as the default gateway. And this is the correct option, that the first hop redundancy protocol reduces routing failures by allowing more than one router to represent itself as the default gateway of a network. Question number 16. In which two ways does a password manager reduces the chance of a hacker stealing a user password? Choose two options. And the options are: option A, it automatically provides a second authentication factor that is unknown to the original user. Option B, it uses an internal firewall to protect the password repository from unauthorized access. Option C, it protects against keystroke logging on a compromised device or website. Option D, it stores the password repository on the local workstation with built-in antivirus and anti-malware functionality. And option E, it encourages user to create stronger passwords. And the correct options are that it protects against keystroke logging on a compromised device or a website, since the user don't have to manually enter the password. Therefore, the keystroke logging hacking is prevented. And it the second correct option is that it encourages user to create strong passwords, since the user has no longer to remember or memorize the password. That's why the user can create stronger passwords. Let's move forward to the next question. Question number 17. Which technology is used to improve web traffic performance by proxy caching? And the options are option A, WSA, option B, firepower, option C, ASA, and option D, FireSite. And the correct option is option A, WSA. So what is WSA? The WSA, or Web Security Appliance, is specifically designed to improve web traffic performance through proxy caching. It stores frequently accessed web content locally, reducing latency and bandwidth usage. Firepower, ASA, and FireSite are primarily focused on security functions like firewalling, intrusion prevention, and threat detection rather than performance optimization through caching. So WSA Web Security Appliance is the correct answer, and this is how the WSA, or the Cisco WSA, is deployed. So it is the user when accesses web content from the internet. So the most frequently accessed web content are stored here in the WSA, and the next time when the user accesses the same content, it is accessible or retrieved through WSA, which reduces the latency as well as the bandwidth consumption. Question number 18. Which type of attack can be mitigated by dynamic ARP inspections? And the options are option A, worm, option B, malware, option C, DDoS, and option D, man in the middle. And the correct option is option D, man in the middle attack. The man in the middle attack rely on ARP poisoning, whereas an attacker sends false ARP messages to manipulate network traffic. Dynamic ARP inspection inspects ARP packets and verifies their authenticity, preventing these forged messages. Question number 19. What are two roles of domain name services? That is DNS. Choose two options, and the options are option A, builds a flat structure of DNS names for more efficient IP operations. Option B, encrypts network traffic as it travels across a WAN by default. Option C, improves security by protecting IP addresses under fully qualified domain names. Option D, enables application to identify resources by name instead of IP addresses. And option E, allows a single host name to be shared across more than one IP addresses. And the correct options are option D, it enables application to identify resources by name instead of IP addresses. And it allows a single host name to be shared across more than one IP addresses. So DNS basically translates human readable domain names into machine readable IP addresses, making it easier for users to access websites and other online resources. DNS supports load balancing and fault tolerance by allowing multiple IP addresses to be associated with a single host name. Let's move to the next question. Question number 20. What mechanism carries multicast traffic between remote sites and supports encryption? And the options are option A, ISATAP, option B, GRE or IPsec, option C, IPsec or ISATAP, and option D, GRE. And the correct option is option B, GRE or IPsec. Explanation. So GRE, generic routing protocol, is a tunneling protocol that can encapsulate various network layers protocol including multicast. IPsec provides encryption, authentication, and integrity for IP packets. By combining GRE and IPsec, we can securely transport multicast traffic between remote sites. Let's move to question number 21. Refer to the exhibit. What mechanism carries multicast traffic between remote sites and supports encryption? I think this question is misrepresented. This question is basically from the previous question, and the question, so this is the same question. It is again repeated. This question is basically repeated in question number 21. Anyway, let's refer to this exhibit, and the source and destination address remains the same. So the question was basically, it's not written here, but the question was, when a PCA sends traffic to PCB on the same VLAN, this is the same VLAN 200. So what does the switch does with the traffic? And the correct option is that the source and destination MAC address remains the same. Since we are in the same VLAN, so the MAC address of both PCA and PCA remain the same. And the explanation for this is, in this scenario, both PCA and PCB are on the same VLAN 200. When PCA sends a frame to PCB, the switch will act as a transparent bridge. This means it will forward the frame directly to PCB without modifying the source or destination MAC addresses. The MAC addresses are used to identify devices on the same network segment, and in this case, both PCs are on the same VLAN segment. Question number 22. How will link aggregation be implemented on a Cisco wireless LAN controller? And the options are option A, one functional physical port is needed to pass client traffic. Option B, the Ethernet channel must be configured in mode active. Option C, when enabled, the WLC bandwidth drops to 500 Mbps. And option D, to pass client traffic, two or more ports must be configured. And the correct option is option A, one functional physical port is needed to pass client traffic. And this is explanation. Sorry, this is again the incorrect explanation. So we will only go with the correct answer since we don't have explanation for this question. Again, we have question number 23, and we have an exhibit. Refer to this exhibit. Which switch in this configuration will be elected as the root bridge? So we have 4 switches: switch 1, switch 2, switch 3, switch 4, and we have MAC addresses of all the 4 switches. So which switch will be selected as the root bridge considering these MAC addresses? So the criteria is that for selection of the root bridge, we consider 2 things. First is the priority, and second is the MAC address. So the lower the priority, the more chances are of the switch to be selected as the root bridge. If the priority is the same, here since we are not given the priority, it means that all the switches have the default priority than the decision for the root bridge is selected based on the lower or the lowest MAC address. So in these four MAC addresses, switch 3 has the lowest MAC address. And how is that? So this is explained here. To determine the root bridge, we need to compare the bridge IDs of each switch. The bridge ID is composed of the, let me clear this clutter. So the bridge ID is composed of the priority set by the administrator and the MAC address of the switch. The switch with the lowest BID or bridge ID becomes the root bridge. Since we don't have information about the priority configured on each switch, we will assume the default priority of 32768. So this is the default priority of the switches. In this case, the root bridge will be the switch with the lowest MAC address. Comparing the MAC addresses, we can see that switch 3 has the lowest MAC address, and this is the MAC address of switch 3. So how this is the lowest MAC address? First we will compare the first octet. All switches have the same first octet, that is 0C. So these numbers are hexadecimal. The second octet, so switch 1, switch 4 has the second octet of E0, which is equal to 224 in decimal. Switch 2 and switch 3 has the MAC address of 0E, which is a value of 14. So the switch 2 and switch 3 has lower MAC address. So the switch 1 and switch 4 will be discarded, and now we have competition between switch 2 and switch 3. So we will again compare the third octet of switch 2 and switch 3, and we have same octet of 15. Here we can see that switch 2 and switch 3 both have the same 15. Fourth octet, switch 2 has 22 and switch 3 has 1A. So 22 is equal to 34 and 1A is basically equal to 26 in hexadecimal. Since 26 is less than 34, therefore switch 3 has a lower fourth octet, and overall, since switch 3 has a lower value in the fourth octet compared to switch 2, it has the overall lowest MAC address among the all switches, and that's why switch 3 is the root bridge. Question number 4 is that which device performs stateful inspection of traffic, and the options are option A firewall, option B switch, option C access point, and option D wireless controller. And the correct option is option A firewall. Stateful inspection involves examining network traffic based on the context of previous packets, such as source and destination IP addresses, port numbers, and protocol information. This allows the firewall to make intelligent decisions about which packet to allow or block, enhancing the security. Let's move to question number 25. Which configuration ensures that switch is always the root for VLAN 750? And the commands are option A, spanning tree VLAN 70 priority 38003685. Option B, spanning tree VLAN 750 root primary. Option C, spanning tree VLAN 750 priority 61440. And option D, spanning tree VLAN 750 priority 0. And the correct option is option D, spanning tree VLAN 750 priority 0. And here is the explanation. So spanning tree elects a root bridge for each VLAN to prevent loops. The switch with the lowest bridge ID becomes the root bridge. Bridge ID is composed of priority and MAC address. The minimum priority value is 0. So the lowest priority that you can set is 0. By setting the priority for VLAN 750 to 0, you ensure that this switch will have the lowest BID possible, making it the root bridge for VLAN 750. Question number 26. Refer the exhibit. Which switch becomes the root bridge? So here we have 4 switches, switch 1, switch 2, switch 3 and switch 4. And the question is asking about that which switch will become the root bridge, and against each switch we have been given the switch or the bridge priority and its MAC address. So for the switch to become root bridge, it must has the lowest bridge ID, and the bridge ID, sorry, this is the bridge ID consists of first the priority and then the MAC address. So the lower priority and lower MAC address is the criteria for the selection as the root bridge. So in this case, we have the bridge priority of 32,768, 32,768 and 30,000. So automatically these two will be discarded because their priority are higher, while these two have the same priority. So here we have a tie, and when the priorities are same, then we decide the decision of the root bridge based on the lower MAC address. So the switch 3 has the MAC address of CCC. We have all the C, while the switch 2 has the MAC address of BB. So the BB is lower than the CC. That's why our root bridge will be S2. So the correct option is switch 2. Question number 27. Which two WAN architecture options help a business scalability and reliability for the network? Choose two options, and the options are option A, asynchronous routing, option B, single homed branches, option C, dual homed branches, option D, static routing, and option E, dynamic routing. And the correct options are option C, dual homed branches, and option E, dynamic routing. So why are these two correct options? The dual home branches, this option involves connecting branches to the WAN through two independent connections. This setup provides redundancy, ensuring that if one connection fails, the other can take over, thereby enhancing both reliability and scalability. While the dynamic routing protocols such as OSPF or BGP automatically adjust the routes based on current network conditions, this adaptability improves scalability by efficiently managing traffic loads and paths, and thus enhances reliability by quickly rerouting traffic in case of a link failure. Question number 28. What criteria is used first during root port selection process? And the options are option A, local port ID, option B, lowest path cost to the root bridge, option C, lowest neighbors bridge ID, and option D, lowest neighbors port ID. And the correct option is option B, lowest path cost to the root bridge. So the primary selection used during the root port selection process in spanning tree protocol is lowest path cost to the root bridge. The root port is the port with the lowest path cost to the root bridge. If multiple paths have the same cost, additional tiebreakers such as the lowest bridge ID of the neighbor and the lowest port ID of the neighbor are used in subsequent steps. Question number 29. Which type of information resides on a DHCP server? And the options are option A, a list of the available IP addresses in a pool. Option B, a list of public IP addresses and their corresponding names. Option C, usernames and passwords for the end users in a domain. And option D, a list of statically assigned MAC addresses. And the correct option is option A. The DHCP server contains a list of available IP addresses in a pool. So a DHCP server maintains a pool of IP addresses and leases them to the clients dynamically as they connect to the network. It also keeps track of which addresses are currently leased out and which are available. Let's move forward to question number 30. A manager asks a network engineer to advise which cloud service models are used so employees do not have to waste their time installing, managing, and updating software which is only used occasionally. Which cloud service model does the engineer recommend? And the options are: option A, infrastructure as a service; option B, platform as a service; option C, business process as service to support different types of service; and option D, software as a service. And the correct option is option D, software as a service. So software as a service is the ideal cloud service model for the manager's requirement. So the SaaS, or the software as a service, provides application directly to end users over the internet. Users don't need to install, manage, or update software on their devices. It's ideal for software used occasionally as there is no upfront investment or ongoing maintenance. Example of SaaS applications include email, such as Microsoft Email 365, CRM software, and Office productivity suites. So this is Office productivity suite, the Microsoft Office 365, while the email can be any SaaS provided email solution. By recommending SaaS, the network engineer helps the manager save time and resources while providing employees with easy access to the necessary software. Question number 31. A port security violation has occurred on a switch port due to the maximum MAC address count being exceeded. Which command must be configured to increment the security violation count and forward an SNMP trap? And the options are: option A, switch port security violation access; option B, switch port security violation protect; option C, switch port security violation restrict; and option D, switch port security violation shutdown. And the correct option is option C, switch port security violation restrict. So what does this command do? Let me a little bit explain it further. So let's suppose here we have a switch and we have ports on this switch, and let's suppose you have implemented security on the switch that only one MAC address can be learned against this port on all these ports. So let's suppose if a user, let's suppose, installs a hub and connect multiple devices over here. Let's suppose this is device 1, this is device 2. So since we have configured the security mechanism that only one MAC address can be learned, so anytime a new device is connected, the security violation count will be incremented, and this command is used to do this security violation increment. An SNMP trap will be sent to the central management service each time a new device is connected, and the count will be incremented. Question number 32. Which CRUD or CRUD operation modifies an existing table or view? So this table, we are talking about the database table or DB table, and these CRUD are basically DB operations. So which CRUD operation modifies an existing table or view? And the options are: read operation, option B, create operation, option C, replace, and option D, update. And the correct option is, option D, update. So the update is the CRUD operation responsible for modifying existing data within a table or view. It allows you to change specific values or attributes of records without deleting and recreating them entirely. The other operations represent different operations. The other options represent different operations. The other options include create, creates a new table or view. The read operation retrieves data from an existing table or view. And the replace typically refers to replacing an entire source, not modifying specific parts. Let's move forward to question number 33. An engineer must configure inter-switch VLAN communication between a Cisco switch and a third-party switch. Which action should be taken? And the options are option A, configure IEEE 802.1p. Option B, configure IEEE 802.1q. Option C, configure ISL. And option D, configure DSCP. And the correct option is option B, configure IEEE 802.1q. So the IEEE 802.1q is the standard protocol for VLAN tagging. It allows multiple VLANs to coexist on a single physical link, which is essential for inter-switch VLAN communication. By configuring VLAN tagging on both the Cisco switch and the third-party switch, you can ensure that VLAN information is carried across the link, enabling communication between VLANs or different switches. So let me explain it further. So let's suppose here we have two switches. This is a Cisco switch, and we have another switch. Let's suppose a third party. Let's suppose a Juniper switch. So here we have, let's suppose, VLAN 110 and another VLAN 220. Similarly, we also have two VLAN over here, 110 and VLAN 220, and we have different devices connected to these VLANs. Let's suppose this device is connected to 220 VLAN and this is connected to 110. Similarly, on this switch again we have devices connected to different VLANs. This is 220. So how to route or communicate between these devices on these different switches? So we must have a physical link between them, and we will tag the VLAN on this link. We will configure this link as a trunk, and we will tag the VLAN 110 and 220 on both sides. We will tag the VLAN over here on this switch as well as over there, and this will enable the inter-VLAN communication between devices on different on switches of different vendor, or even on switches of the same vendor. And the IEEE 802.1q is the VLAN tagging protocol. Question number 34. What is a function of a remote access VPN? And the options are option A, used cryptographic tunneling to protect the privacy of data for multiple users simultaneously. Option B, used exclusively when a user is connected to a company's internal network. Option C, establishes a secure tunnel between two branch sites. And option D, allows the users to access company internal network resources through a secure tunnel. And the correct option is option D. The remote access VPN allows the user to access company internal network resources through a secure tunnel. So remote access VPNs enable individual users to connect to a company's internal network securely over the internet, ensuring that data is encrypted and protected while accessing network resources from remote location. Let's suppose this is a company headquarters. Sorry for my drawing. Let's suppose this is a building, and here we have, let's suppose, a remote user with a laptop. So how will this user connect? And this is the internet. He is in some other country or in another city and he want to connect to headquarter resources over the internet. So he will use a remote access VPN, and this will create a type of secure tunnel between his laptop and his remote headquarters. Question number 35. What is a DHCP client? And the options are: option A, a workstation that requests a domain name associated with its IP address. Option B, a host that is configured to request an IP address automatically. Option C, a server that dynamically assigns IP addresses to hosts. And option D, a router that statically assigns IP addresses to hosts. And the correct option is option B, a host that is configured to request an IP address automatically. So a DHCP client is a device or host on a network that requests an IP address and other configuration information from a DHCP server automatically, rather than having a static IP address assigned manually. Let's move forward to question number 36. And the question is, what is a practice that protects a network from VLAN hopping attacks? And the options are: option A, enable dynamic ARP inspection. Option B, configure an ACL access control list to prevent traffic from changing VLANs. Option C, change native VLAN to an unused VLAN ID. And option D, implement port security on internet-facing VLANs. And the correct option is option C, change native VLAN to an unused VLAN ID. So why is that the correct option? It is because changing the native VLAN to an unused VLAN ID can prevent VLAN hopping attacks, which often exploits the default VLAN configuration. By using an unused VLAN for the native VLAN, you reduce the risk of such attacks exploiting the VLAN trunks. Question number 37, refer the exhibit. This is the exhibit. If OSPF is running on this network, how does router 2 handle traffic from site B? This is site B to 10.10.13.128/25 at site A. So here we have a network at site A that is this 10.10.13.128/25, and we have OSPF running over here. This stands for OSPF. So this OSPF has basically learned two routes. Basically one route, and we have where two next hop where two redundant links, and the route learned is 10.10.13.0/25. So this is not the same route as this one. Other are the directly connected links. So what would be the correct option when we have this routing table? And here another hint is that gateway of last resort is not set. And this is the routing table, or these are the routes that are available on this router 2. So the options are: option A, it loads balances traffic out of FA01 and FA02. Option B, it is unreachable and discards the traffic. Option C, it sends packets out of the interface FA02. And option D, it sends traffic out of the interface FA01. So these interfaces, one is FA01, one is FA02. And the correct option is option B, it is unreachable and discards the traffic. And why is that? Because we have no route available for this network. This route is available, but this route does not include this particular network or subnet. And the other option is that we also don't have the gateway of the last resort. That's why it is unreachable and the traffic for this network is discarded. If the gateway of the last resort was set as this one, such as that 10.10.10.9 or 10.10.10.13, that we would have been able to reach this particular network because the traffic would have been sent through the gateway of the last resort. But since we haven't set the gateway of the last resort, the traffic would be discarded. I hope this is understandable. If there is any question regarding any comment or any question regarding any question in this video, you can comment and I will be happy to reply and remove your confusion. Question number 38. What is the purpose of traffic shaping? And the options are option A, to mitigate delay over slow links. Option B, to provide fair queuing for buffered flows. Option C, to limit the bandwidth that a flow can use. And option D, be a marking mechanism that identifies different flows. And the correct option is the purpose of traffic shaping is to limit the bandwidth that a flow can use. So traffic shaping is used to limit the bandwidth of a flow. And how is that done? The traffic shaping controls the amount of data transmitted into a network over a specified period, smoothing out bursts of traffic and ensuring that the flow adheres to a defined rate. This helps in managing congestion and ensuring that no single flow monopolizes the available bandwidth. Question number 39. Where does the configuration reside when a helper address is configured to support DHCP? And the options are option A, on the router closest to the server. Option B, on the router closest to the client. Option C, on every router along the path. And option D, on the switch trunk interface. And the correct option is on the router closest to the client. So a helper address is configured on the router closest to the DHCP client to forward DHCP broadcast traffic to the DHCP server. This is because DHCP clients typically broadcast their requests and the router nearest to the client will receive these broadcasts. By configuring a helper address, the router knows where to forward these requests to reach the DHCP server. Question number 40. What facilitates a telnet connection between devices by entering the device name? So typically when we use telnet, we enter the IP address. So if instead of IP address, let's suppose this is the IP address of a server, we use the server, let's suppose the server name such as, let's suppose host 1. So what facilitates the entering of the host name instead of IP address? And the options are option A, SNMP, option B, DNS lookup, option C, syslog, and option D, NTP. And the correct option is option B, DNS lookup. So DNS, domain name system lookup, resolve device names to IP addresses, allowing users to initiate a telnet connection by using the device name instead of its IP addresses. So if you use host name, you will need the DNS lookup to resolve this host name to the IP address, because the devices eventually understand and communicate over the IP addresses. Question number 41. When implementing a router as a DHCP server, which two features must be configured? And we have to choose two options, and the options are option A, relay agent information, option B, database agent, option C, address pool, option D, smart relay, and option E, manual bindings. And the correct options are option C, address pool, and option E, manual bindings. So the address pool defines the range of IP addresses that the DHCP server can assign to the clients, and manual bindings are used to assign specific IP addresses to specific devices based on their MAC addresses, ensuring that particular devices always receive the same IP addresses. Question number 42. How do servers connect to the network in a virtual environment? And the options are option A, wireless to an access point that is physically connected to the network. Option B, a cable connected to a physical switch on the network. Option C, a virtual switch that links to an access point that is physically connected to the network. And option D, a software switch on a hypervisor that is physically connected to the network. And the correct option is option D, a software switch on a hypervisor that is physically connected to the network. So in a virtual environment, servers or virtual machines connect to the network through a virtual switch managed by the hypervisor. This virtual switch is linked to the physical network through the hypervisor, which is connected to the physical switch or other network infrastructure. And this is a diagram of this virtualized environment. So let's suppose here we have a host, and on this host we have the virtual switch made possible by the hypervisor, and this virtual switch is connected to the physical NIC, and the VMs are basically connected to this virtual switch, and the physical NIC of the server is then connected to the physical switches. These are the physical switches of the underlying network or underlying network. And again, on the other hand, again we have a physical host, physical NIC, and physical NIC is connected to the virtual switch through hypervisor, and the VM on the physical host are basically connected to the virtual switch through virtual NICs. Here we have virtual NICs. Question number 43, refer the exhibit. Which switch becomes the root of the spanning tree for the VLAN 110? So here we have 4 switches, switch 1, switch 2, switch 3, switch 4, and we are given the MAC addresses of all these switches for the same VLAN 110. So which switch will become the root switch? And again, remember the criteria for the root switch, for the switch to become a root is first priority, and if the priority is same, then the second is MAC address. The lower the priority and the lower MAC address of a switch qualify it for becoming the root switch. So here we have the priorities. These are the priorities. So the lowest priority is basically this one, 2, 4, 5, 6, 5, 8, 6. All others have greater priorities. That's why the switch 2 will qualify to become the root switch or root bridge. If 2 switches have the same priority, then we will go to the next criteria, that is the MAC address, and the lower MAC address of the switch will decide will make the decision of for a switch to become the root switch or root bridge. Again, this is the same thing explained over here, that first we look at the bridge priority, and if we have 2 switches or more switches with the same priority, then we use the MAC address as the tie breaker. Question number 44, which device tracks the state of active connections in order to make a decision to forward a packet through? And the options are option A, wireless access point, option B, firewall, option C, wireless LAN controller, and option D, router. And the correct option is option B, firewall. So a firewall tracks the state of active connections using a feature called stateful inspection or stateful packet inspection. This allows the firewall to make decisions about whether to forward or block packets based on the state of the connection. For example, whether the connection is new, established, or related to an existing connection. Question number 45. How does a switch process a frame received on port FA01 with the destination MAC address? This when the table is missing the address. And the options are: option A, it drops the frame immediately. Option B, it forwards the frame back out of the interface FA01. Option C, it floods the frame to all interfaces except FA01. And option D, it holds the frame until the MAC address timer expires and then drops the frame. And the correct option is option C, it floods the frame to all interfaces except the FA01. So we have studied this concept, the learning of the MAC address again and again. So when the MAC address is non-known to the switch, it is flooded over all the ports except on the port on which it was received to learn the MAC address, and this is done through the ARP or address resolution protocol. You can study this explanation if you like by pausing the video.